Very quick history lesson. 1745, Bonnie Prince Charlie, a Scottish prince, a Jacobite and an enemy of the central government in London, defeated an English army. He then marched unopposed with 6,000 men halfway through England. He reached Derby and he stopped. If he'd have kept going, if he'd have kept marching with those 6,000 men, Bonnie Prince Charlie would have taken London. So why did he stop? Bonnie Prince Charlie stopped because there was a spy in the camp. And that spy sowed discord among his generals and eventually persuaded Charles himself to return to Scotland. When he returned to Scotland, the English regrouped, marched north and defeated Charles at the Battle of Culloden. His men were scattered and slaughtered, and the British establishment was protected to fight another day. The spy that was in Charles's camp did two things. He sowed discord among the group. He basically turned general against general, started infighting, but he also spread misinformation. He told them that there was a massive English army waiting to ambush them, an army of 9,000 men. That army didn't even exist. He then said that the French weren't going to land and weren't going to support the Jacobites. The French were going to support the Jacobites and they were going to land. Why am I telling you this story? Well, very, very simply, the British government never changes its tactics. It has used exactly the same tactics for the past 300 years. And we must realise that in the same way that Bonnie Prince Charlie was a threat to the British establishment, the British establishment see our movement as a threat. Not necessarily as a violent threat, because again and again we keep telling them that we're not violent, but they certainly see us as a political threat. And if we look at what's happened in the last few years, we got the Brexit vote. Then in 2017, a year after Brexit, terrorists started slaughtering men, women and children on our streets. This sparked an upsurge in rage among the British patriotic working classes that has never been seen in this country. In October 2017, we had probably 40,000 men on the streets of London. They were veterans and they were football lads. Those were some of the hardest men in this country, came together peacefully and marched silently through the city of London. I had the privilege to address that crowd. Since then, the numbers have dwindled and dwindled and dwindled. There's been division, there's been infighting. The groups now seem to be divided. The Brexit Party, led by Nigel Farage, did huge damage to UKIP. And of course, that group of football lads, the leadership of that group met with the leadership of UKIP in Parliament in 2018. And a pact was made between UKIP, the veterans and the football lads. And if that had been followed through, we would have had a major working class political party in the UK. And of course, throw into that mix Tommy, with his charismatic leadership and his bravery. And the whole movement was coming together in a way that could have formed an unstoppable working class political force. That has been undermined, and I believe it's been undermined by the state. And I want to explain a little bit about how the state does that. The state undermines a movement in three ways. First of all, it infiltrates the movement. It gets people on the inside, whether it's MI5, special branch, whatever you want to call these groupings these days. They change their names regularly to keep themselves under the radar. The other thing is our groups are seen by central government as extremist groups. They genuinely think that we are about to go on a violent rampage and start committing dreadful acts of violence. When the reality is, what we've been trying to do from the beginning is to give a political solution and a political analysis to the situation our country faces in terms of mass immigration, in terms of Islamic terrorism and the Islamization of the UK. Now think about this: if our group had managed to pull off getting Tommy into UKIP, getting football fans, veterans supporting UKIP, really the backbone of the British working class supporting UKIP, mobilised and voting for UKIP, it could have changed British politics forever. The Brexit parties has very, very severely damaged the UKIP cause without a shadow of a doubt. But it's not over. It's not over. And Gerard Batten hopefully will get re-elected to be leader of UKIP. If he doesn't, I fear UKIP are finished. But that's not what this video is about. I want to talk about how the state infiltrates these groups. And it does three things. First of all, it gets the infiltrators in. So it puts them in position. Some of these people may be people who the state has information on. They're maybe they've committed crimes that the state knows about, and they'll be prosecuted unless they work for the state. There could be financial inducements. They could be getting paid by the state to infiltrate these groups. They could actually be state players themselves. They could be undercover police officers or MI5 agents who are working for MI5. And they have three ways of destabilizing a group. First of all, they sow division among the groups. So the whispering campaigns will start. There'll be a campaign of gossip. The most likely people to be working in this way are the gossips and people around the gossips, because all you need to do is feed a little bit of information to a gossip, and then they will spread that little tidbit all around the groups. The person who they're whispering against will be discredited, and the group will eventually split, and there'll be horrendous amounts of infighting. So where you see infighting and where you see slander and whispering, you can absolutely guarantee that there are people there doing that on behalf of the government. That's the first one. The second one is, the second way that state players will work is they will try and make the movement seem so ridiculous. So you will have someone that just, when they're on television, they look ridiculous, they sound ridiculous, when their policies are so extreme that they're beyond the pale. And I believe that the state has done this very, very successfully in the UK for many years, controlling groups and making them seem so extreme that the mainstream population of the country quite rightly will never touch them. And I believe that's happening now as well. I believe that's going on. Thirdly, they will try and get agents of influence at the very top of these groups that will steer the groups in a specific direction. We saw this in Northern Ireland with Sinn Féin. Sinn Féin was well, actually still is, heavily infiltrated by the British security services, as the IRA was. And what happened was that ship was turned in a specific direction to face in a specific way. Now, obviously, in the case of Sinn Féin and the IRA, that probably wasn't a bad thing because it stopped them being involved in violence and murdering innocent people. In the terms of our movement, what it means is turning, where you see people turning away from talking about Islam and talking about the problems of Islam and going down all sorts of other rabbit holes, you can be absolutely sure that behind that there are state players who want to turn it away from talking about the real issues that this country is facing and will face in the next 10 to 20 years. And finally, the other issue that these state players will do is they will gather information and intelligence on our groups. And when we're at the meeting on Friday, and one of the guys that's been involved in this movement for a lot longer than me came up to me and he said, that guy over there is the anti-terrorist branch. And they weren't looking out, as far as I could see, they weren't looking out for jihadists, they were looking at us. So if we are deemed to be the threat that I think we're deemed to be by the British government to the establishment, they will use whatever measures they can to discredit and destroy our movement. And we've got to be aware of that. We've got to understand how the security services work and what they're at. So think about it. I'll just summarise this again. If anybody is sowing division among the movement, and sometimes people do it inadvertently. We've all done it. In fact, we've all from time to time said things and got into arguments with people, and we've got to be aware of that. That actually, when we do that, that we're inadvertently helping our enemies. We've got to try and keep a form of unity. That's the first one. The second one, they will make the movement seem so ridiculous that nobody in the mainstream will come anywhere near us and touch us. The third one, they will act as agents of influence. They will try and turn the ship in a certain way. So instead of going after what we should be going after, we start going after minor issues and side issues. And fourthly, they'll be gathering intelligence on us. We are seen as a threat by the government. You've got to believe that. And so what can we do? What can we do to mitigate these things? We will never know who these people are that are doing this. That's the whole idea, that sometimes the people who you least suspect are the ones that are culprits. And the other thing is, they want to create paranoia where we're all looking at each other suspiciously. So we shouldn't do that. But what we should do is, if somebody is turning the ship in a specific direction away from what the problem is, and as far as I remember, when we started this, yes, we said we're against all extremism. Of course, we're against all extremism. But the primary threat to our people is coming from the Islamization of our country, Islamic terrorism, Sharia law, and the infiltration of government structures by Islamists who want to turn the UK into a Sharia state. That is, as far as I know, what we were about when we started. If people are turning away from that, we've got to very gently turn the ship back in that direction. It's as simple as that. Turn the ship in the direction it should be facing, not in the other direction. What do we do about the division? We make sure that as much as it is possible, we have unity with each other. United we stand, divided we fall. There's a verse in the Bible that says that it's blessed when brethren dwell together in unity. We need to, wherever possible, be in unity. There are some groups that to me are just beyond the pale. And there's only one group, and I'm not going to mention it on this video, but anyone that knows me knows the group I'm talking about. And I've got very specific reasons for having my feelings about that group. And it's not to do with their politics, it's to do with their mode of operation and what they do. But that's another story. So wherever it's possible, bring all these groups together. Bring the DFLA together. Bring Tommy's people together. Bring the FLA together. Bring any other football lads together. Get all the other clubs that aren't really involved, and find common ground where we can work together. I mean, one of the groups I've found to be most courageous and most loyal to the veterans is the Chelsea lads. I've always had so much time for the lads from Chelsea. They're a great bunch of guys, and they have always, right from the very beginning, supported us and supported what we've been doing. Tommy's people, everyone from Tommy's side, needs to be together with the DFLA, the football lads, the veterans. We need to make this into a genuine mass movement, especially with what's coming up this week. If Tommy goes to prison, if Tommy's sent down, we need to have a strategy to put pressure on the government. So we've got to be aware that these things happen. The best way to overcome them is turn the ship in the direction it should be facing. Make sure there's unity where there was division. And just be aware that if people are starting to sow division or try to turn the ship in a certain way, there could be reasons for that. And also be aware that everything that we do and say, because of mobile technology, because of the electronic surveillance capabilities that the government has, everything that we say and do can and will be recorded by the state. So we just need to know that when we're talking and we're talking to each other, that everything that we're saying is listened to. But it doesn't mean it's not winnable.